2011, Anna Serner has been the Chief Executive Officer of the Swedish Institute, an institute that was founded in 1963 to develop and support the growth of the Swedish film industry. In the capacity of CEO, Anna has worked diligently and tirelessly to achieve gender equality in funding for Swedish film productions. Prior to her groundbreaking work at the Swedish Film Institute, Anna was managing director of the Swedish Media Publishers Association, where she actively promoted freedom of speech and the media's role in society. Before that, Anna ran a marketing communications consultancy business and was CEO for 8 years of the Advertising Association of Sweden. She has multiple board appointments and has served on many Swedish government commissions, including one on copyright. In addition to a degree in law, Anna studied filmmaking at the Stockholm School of Film, as well as film studies at Stockholm University. So please, everybody, join me in welcoming our guest this evening, Anna Serner.
Well, I'm really honored to be here, and I'm really honored to share with you, as you are now the students that I used to be. I started off, as Lydia said, in a film school, and I kind of realized that that wasn't my fishing pond. I don't know if you have realized yet what your fishing ponds are. Congratulations. But, you know, going to a place where you feel that you're just not really cool enough to be picked. And I realized after a while that I was probably going to go lining up for making coffee for a couple of years before even being able to do films. And I just felt that that wasn't good enough, actually, for me. So that's why I went into law school, and I practiced law for just a couple of years. One horrible year in a bank. That wasn't my fishing pond either. But then I went into the Advertising Association. And so I was working as the lawyer at the Swedish Advertising Association. And then I got appointed to be the CEO. And I learned from my predecessor, who left the job. And he said, when I got appointed, he said, well, yeah, and you know, maybe this will work. You're a bit of a captain girl. But I can tell you, never talk about gender inequality, because, you know, you will just be considered a whining bitch if you do that. And I said, wise as I was, oh, yes, I won't. And I realized already from the beginning that that won't happen. Because I realized as well that life isn't really fair, and the gender inequality isn't really justice. So I will actually start off showing this little short film just to get you in the mode, what it is being a man and what it is being a woman. So we'll see if it works and the sound works. It's in Swedish. And I knew that already from the beginning, but it's not that the men aren't good. It's just that they don't even have to perform usually as well as women do. And that is a knowledge that if you know that, you can actually have another strategy. And there's a lot of guys, I want to say from the beginning, this is not against men. It's just for us all to understand that we are sort of all in the same race. And what really matters for you guys is quality, right? You want to be the best cinematographer. You want to be the best screenwriter. You don't want to be a male screenwriter or a female screenwriter. You just want to do your profession. But there are differences for the genders. And I just want to share with you so you understand really what it's all about is research that was made in Boston. And this was in the end of 1990s. And the Boston Symphony Orchestra, which was very white and male, they wanted to change that, so they wanted female musicians. So what they did, they made the audition anonymously. So the musician came in on stage behind a curtain, and the jury was sitting like you. And the musicians came in, and they played their little part, whatever it was, and they went out again, one by one. And then in the end, the jury, still haven't seen anyone, picked the best, who made the best music. And they picked more men, which was very disappointing for everyone. And you can always try to find arguments of why is that happening. And there are really, in gender research, there are always two kinds of answers. The one answer is the biological, that men actually are more biologically prepared to do things, like running, for instance. But in this case, it would be like, do the men have another DNA, so they have a more musical sense, maybe? Or does men have longer fingers, so they reach better on their instruments, maybe? Or you can have the social construction answer, which means that women don't get to practice as much because they take care of the family and they go home and they take care of your children. And that would be very logical because then they don't get to practice as much as the men and they won't be as good as the men. But before doing that, the Boston Symphony Orchestra did the audition once again. So they made the musician walk in once again. This time they put a thick carpet on the floor. And the musicians came in, the same musicians, they played the same songs or whatever it is, going out again. And this time the jury picked 50-50. And why is that? Because they couldn't hear the steps. So they couldn't determine what kind of expectations they were having. So for the first time, they weren't biased. For the first time, they actually listened to the music. And suddenly, the quality was not within a gender. The quality was within the individuals. And if you know that, all this talk about, well, you know, there aren't any good ones. And I mean, I now realized I've been traveling around here in the States the last 10 days. And in many film schools, the students that are admitted, it's 50-50. But then they come out and suddenly they aren't good enough. So for me, that is just not okay. And I realized that I had to do something about that when I was appointed the CEO of the Swedish Advertising Association, and my predecessor saying, "Don't talk about it, Anna." And I said, "No, I won't." And then, like, one day later, I was called up by a reporter of the trade press in Sweden of advertisement. And he had got hold of our survey of payments. And in the survey, you could easily read that women earned less than the men on the similar positions. In the same cities, whatever, similar positions, less pay. So he called me up, and I had no media training by that time, so I answered him very honestly, because he asked me, "So Anna, what do you say about this?" I said, "Yeah, you know, that's really shitty, but that is life. That's how it is all over the place. It's not like only the advertising business." And then we had a good talk for half an hour, and I thought, wow, I really taught him a lot about life and being a woman. And I didn't realize what I was doing, but then I came back 2 days later, and we always, as being the association, we always got a lot of papers, and we spread them out on the table, so when you walked into us, you could get all these papers for free. And the first thing I saw 2 days later, that was like my 4th day at work. I could see the front page of all these papers. It was a big picture of me with the headline, "It's shitty, says Anna Serner." So my chairman called me up, and he was like, "Well, that wasn't a very good idea, Anna." And I was like, "Yeah, but, you know, I didn't know." But that made me the spokesperson for these issues, because there are really not a lot of women. First of all, there are not a lot of women in leading positions. And secondly, they never talk about gender equality, or they never used to anyways. So I was kind of the first one that actually talked about it. And being the only one getting all the calls, I got really tired of talking and nothing, of course, happened. So I decided to stop talk and start do. So we could at least try something, and then we can talk about what we are doing, and maybe it leads to change. And if it doesn't, we didn't lose anything more than I probably would lose my job, which I realized that could be the case. So I started off doing that in the Advertising Association, and I kept on being the spokesperson. And I actually realized, you know, as well as being a woman, and I was 34 years old when I was appointed, and I realized, of course, in a position of being the association person, it's usually men that have done their career pretty successfully usually, and then they are sort of kicked aside because they're getting too old, and then they become the association's CEO. So picking me, a young woman, and I wasn't even from the Advertising Association, of course it was because I had a law degree, I knew something that they didn't, I was outspoken and I could take people, but I was a woman. So that was, of course, a PR trick, which I realized, and I told my chairman, so I realized why you pick me. Of course, it's because I'm really great, but as well because I'm a woman. I said, "Oh, no, we would never do that. No quota, Anna." And I said, "Well, you're quoted in because you're a man, so I can be quoted in because I'm a woman." But I said, "No, that's not true." But then, of course, he was lying, because there was one woman in the board, and I asked her, and she said, "Yeah, of course, that's a good PR trick." So, of course, I was. And that's totally okay for me to be that way. But then when I was going into my other jobs, I actually told my chairman that when we had the interview, that if you don't want me to talk about gender equality, then you shouldn't appoint me, because I will never stop doing that. Because by that time I as well was so sick of the questions. How do you do, Anna, having a family and children? How do you combine that with work? And that's, it's like, hey, I'm here because I have a profession, and I'm talking about something in my profession, and you only ask me about my family situation. Which man gets those questions? So it wasn't like I got sick of talking about it, and I started doing, as I said. So I got appointed anyways to the 2 jobs I've had, the last in the Media Association and now in the Film Institute. And both times the chairman have always male chairman I've had. They said, yeah, now you keep on doing. It's fine. Because they didn't realize what that doing was. Because I can tell you there's always a lot of fuss around that doing. So much fuss that I actually got appointed 2011. This is a Swedish expression, so it's pretty hard to translate. But more or less 2011 most female troublemaker in Sweden. And that was supposed to be a compliment, because being a troublemaker, that means that you are innovative and you're creative and you're doing smart things. But for me, it has been both a burden and something people Google up. So they're like, are you a troublemaker, Anna? No, that was just a title. But then I came to the Film Institute. And as Lydia said, we are the biggest funding body, and to understand, you can ask Rebecca, because she's now actually applying for money at the Institute, and she will get to know that we say no to 90% of everyone that applies. I'm sorry. So it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man. It's very, very hard. But we are the most important financiers. We have soft money, so we never claim the money back. And if we are on board, everyone gets the other financiers on board because they want our money, of course. Which means that if we do something, things actually can change. So I realized that having been the spokesperson, I needed to keep on speaking. And I realized by that time, and that was like 11 or 10 years afterwards, I've learned a lot. So I realized this is no different from other worlds. I just need to keep on doing and not only talking, but I just didn't realize what to do, actually. Because you don't know a business, so you really don't know where are the glass ceilings and what are the obstacles. I had pretty good idea what I wanted to do, but I felt to not be the troublemaker, stay a little bit calm here, Anna, and shut your mouth for a while. So I said I will do that, shut my mouth for 6 months and learn the business. But it took me like 6 weeks to realize it was exactly the same thing. Because then I went to Amsterdam, where the world's greatest international documentary film festival is, where you pitch for money. Have you ever been in pitching forums? Yeah? So, there were like 40 financiers, usually from the broadcasters, because those are the most important screenings for documentaries. And then it's a big auditorium. And we are, who are not the financiers in that situation, we are there to listen to see what's in pipeline and what will come in a couple of years. And it's very, very formal how you do it. You get 15 minutes each. It's 5 minutes presentation, 5 minutes showing some screens, and 5 minutes Q&A. And then it's the next one. And there's a lot of people, of course, wanting to present their projects to get financed. So there is a selection already just to be able to pitch your idea. So I was sitting there, and the first day, I was sitting there for 2 whole days. The first day, no woman at all, which I thought was a little bit weird. And everyone said around me, yeah, but that's how it is. But then the second day, things started to change. And what happened first was very interesting. It was the first Nordic project coming up. It was a Finnish guy, and he and his male producer were supposed to present a case. And I don't know if you know Finnish people, but they aren't the best in English. And he came up and he tried to present something, and it was just, I didn't get anything. And I thought maybe it's because I never been to these forums before. But, well, I didn't. And then he showed some pictures from the film. And it was very Nordic, which means gray, 50 Shades of Grey. You didn't get anything. And then the question time was, and I was like, what are they going to ask for questions? And actually the first guy raising his hand, and I actually think it was Nick Fraser from BBC, who is the most important financer, raising his hand and say, yeah, and I forgot that this guy, he had made before one documentary, which had been successful and really, really great, what I have understood. I haven't seen it. But he had traveled around the world winning a lot of prizes. So this guy raises his hand and he said, well, you know, I didn't get anything. And everyone was like, yeah, you realize no one did. But then he said, but, you know, I know you, and you made your last film, and that was great. So, of course, I trust you. So I'm in. And then the other started raising their hands, and they were in too. It's the followers coming along. And then the next presentation was, and that was the first female presentation. It was a female Chilean film director with her female producer. And she was like Glenn's wife here in the picture. She was so well prepared. I mean, she's like any of other women. We always prepare ourselves up to here. And she had, as well, like the Finnish guy, had made one very successful documentary before, traveling around the world, so that was exactly the same. But she really came up, and she made this fantastic presentation about the film she was making about her grandmother in Chile, who have had tea with her female friends once a month since the 50s. So she described these characters that some had lost their husbands in the revolution, and one was very Catholic and had a lot of children. One was very promiscuous, no children. Catholic one, no like. And, you know, she had a lot of description that was fantastic. And then she showed, and it was exactly like that. The one painting her lips, and the other one really not approving at all. And it was just, 5 minutes. And then the question time was, and it was totally silent. And I thought that was the best project for the whole 2 days. But no questions first. And then this guy raises his hand and he said, yeah, you know, what is this film about? I said, what is this film about? This is about Chile going from dictatorship into democracy. This is about a lot of people's family life that, you know, what is this film about? And then he said, well, you know, you have only made one film before. Why should I trust you? I'm not in. She didn't get any money. And that is actually exactly what happens, that men are picked of their potential and women of their experience. And in this case, both had exactly the same experience and exactly as successful, but the man was picked because you had the trust. So I was so upset. And I didn't say anything, but I went back home. This was in November, and I started my work in October. And in January, we had a presentation of that half year's premieres of Swedish films on cinema. We always present them. And at that particular time, which is very unfair of any funding because it's films that have been made without us and a long time ago or recently. It's just when they are having premiere. And we had 8% female directors. So I was called up by the media immediately, this time a little bit more media trained. And the public service radio comes to me and says, sticking a microphone under my nose and saying, so what do you say, Anna Serner? And this time I was like, I say it's a catastrophe. And the next day, headline, big picture, Anna Serner, it's a catastrophe, says Anna Serner. And I got the message out, which was exactly what I wanted. We did have had an assignment to aim to fund equally, but it said as well, with equally, it's meant for around 40, 60, but never on the expense of quality. So, and then I said, well, 40, 60, for me, that's rubbish. It should be 50-50 over time. Not every year, because for narratives, we make 15 funding decisions a year. That's too few. So you always have to measure over time. But 50-50 it has to be, because otherwise women are 40 and men are 60. So that's how it started. And then I realized now I have to start working here, because I already set the pace. I was very clear. The industry got very, very nervous because they realized she's actually serious. And there was this guy, a Swedish film director, a very famous actor, Peter Dalle, he had this big 2 pages in one of the tabloids saying, it's only what's between your legs that counts. And we funded 74% male, so, well, I don't know what he had between his legs, but... So what I did was finding a companion at the work, a woman that I really trusted, that I knew could take as well being an ambassador. And we just sat down by her kitchen table, actually, and decided how shall we do this? Let's start doing and not talking. And we made the strategy that we make an action plan and to address the most common arguments with an action. And then, as I've been in the advertising business, I knew that not too many arguments, because then nobody listens and the media won't write about it. So we decided at the most 5 bullet points in that action plan to make it happen. So the first one that we picked, which is very, very, very common argument why there aren't as many women, or why people don't employ women, or they are not in the leading position. It's because there are very few competent women. And as I said, they were obviously not that less competent when they went into film school or any other school. And when they go out, they're usually prepared and have studied much more, because they know they will be scrutinized much more. And still, suddenly, they are not competent. And if they are competent, you will anyways forget them. So we decided to prove them wrong, actually. So last week we launched a website, which is NordicWomeninFilm.com, where we searched for every female filmmaker since film started 1895. It's 700 of them. It's the cinematographers, screenwriters, editors, directors, and producers that we have been able to find. It was supposed to be a Nordic joint venture, and the other Nordic friends of mine were really, while it was only talking, they were very enthusiastic. When it came to acting, and that means paying some money, putting some time into it, they all withdrew and said, no, it's not a priority for us any longer. So now it's a Nordic Women in Film, but it's really only Swedish. But we believe that with the attention this gets, they won't be able to stay out of it too long. So we hope, and I mean, the other Nordic women are very upset, of course, the ones that want to be in that site. And we are making it like a Wikipedia, so everyone can add on their own CVs. And we will have an editor that sees that everything is fine. And when we launched it the last weekend, we filled the houses. We have 2 cinemas in our house. One is with 360 seats and the other one with 120. And we had to open up both of them and live stream what happened on stage, because it was such an interest. Because this is hot. Suddenly, things has become hot. And I realized that last year, walking on the streets in Cannes, I don't know if you have been there, don't go there if you don't have to, because it's really horrible. But, as I've been the troublemaker, I'm sort of used to, the bitch comes along. And suddenly this woman comes up to me in the street and she says, do you want to take a selfie? And I was like, do I want to take a selfie? Why would I want to take a selfie? Because you're Anna Serner. I said, yeah, that's true. And suddenly I had become a rock star. And I was like, why is this? Another guy, he said to a woman who is the producer of Timbuktu, I don't know, have you seen that film? A beautiful film. And I'm really starstruck by that producer having done this fantastic film. But he says to her, hey, you have to come and meet Anna Serner. And I was like, who? We switched positions here. And I was like, when did this happen? And then I realized it happened last year in the Oscars when Kate Blanchett went up and started talking about how it is being a woman. And then Emma Watson and Meryl Streep and Gina Davis been working for a long time. And I got an email from Meryl Streep last week. I'm so sorry, Anna, I just can't show up. We are having a seminar. It's like, I'm getting a mail from Meryl Streep. Because what happened was when these red carpet people started talking, media's attention, of course, got very alert. And they were like, oh, shit, this is shitty probably. But isn't there anywhere in the world where things has happened? And they're like, oh, yeah, somewhere over there in Sweden, there's an Anna Serner. Let's talk to her. So suddenly that's my life now. I go in film festivals and the applause for me is like, it's almost embarrassing. But it's really because we are the only ones that have been able to do things. And that is, of course, very exciting, but as well, kind of demanding, of course, because we're being the role models. But that's as well why I'm here, because I like that we can show that you can do things. It's worthwhile working for it. The next argument is, this is actually valid for men and women, of course. It's really hard to get established. So if you don't find women for the larger budgets, it's because they say they don't have they are not established enough. They are not used to the big budgets. We can't trust them, and men have a hard time getting established as well, but not as hard. So what we did was that we started what we called a mentorship program, which we called Movement. And these are the Movement women. And as you can see, they aren't that young, because being a director doesn't mean that you're a young person. It means that probably you've been working in television shows and you've been doing a lot of other things, because you just have to be out there working. And it takes so long time. So what we did was that we combined 5 established film directors, or if they made 3 narratives or drama series, together with 10 less established, only have made 1 narrative or 1 drama series. And there is a professor there, and she's professor of gender and organization in Sweden. So she gave the knowledge of how life is really after doing research. So, and there is another, like a professor teaching, who were working with everyone how to get a strategy to actually still be able to do your films, take your film idea from idea to the audience through all these obstacles and gatekeepers and whatever it is. And that means that you get to know it's not you that is the problem, it's the structure that is the problem, and then you get a better self-confidence, and then you're actually more able to go out there and fight for your rights. So this program was very successful, and we need to do it again, actually. The third argument, and this is a very common argument, is that there aren't as many young women as men who dream of becoming a film director. And that's true if you ask them just the first question. Then we decided that's not good enough to just say that's how life is, because we all know young women have as many dreams as young men. Something happened during the way. So what we did studies in pre-film schools and on-film schools, and it turned out that the women used to want to become film directors. But when they said so, the reaction from the surrounding was, Do you want to become a film director? Are you sure? I know you know how competitive it is. It's so hard. And how are you going to combine it with a family? And you know you will have to work day and night for months. And you will not be able to have children. Blah, 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 blah. While when a young man says the same thing, the reaction is, wow, you want to become a film director? Are you sure it's really competitive? But what the hell, you can do it. What do you have to lose? Just go out there. You're talented. You're good. So if you get to hear that all the time, of course, the young women, they didn't even think there was an opportunity or possibility for them to become film directors. So pragmatic as you are, they just decided to do something else. Like me, I skipped the film business and went into law school because I realized I won't be able to do films. While the men, they just get to hear, you're great, go do it. And that's why I really want to encourage the women to realize that you have exactly the same competence. But producers come to me, male and female producers come to me, and they say, you know, Anna, it's only young men coming up showing their portfolios. They knock on my door, and I never met them, and they are so courageous, and they really want, and never women do. And it's like, yeah, that's probably true. But if you want the best films, you should probably still start looking for the women and not be so lazy sitting and waiting for them, because otherwise you won't get the best ones. Because otherwise you will just have to get the ones that actually had the possibility to move their legs, and that's not good enough. Then the producer gets really mad with me, actually. But that's the truth. This is probably the most important thing in our action plan. And that's the argument, counting the percentage of women as compared to men doesn't lead to quality. Because what I get to hear now a lot is that, yeah, Anna, you're so out of focus. You're just doing this generic quality stuff. But our films aren't doing well in the cinemas. And that's because you are out of focus. And I know for sure that the films that they talk about are about 90% made out of men. And the female films haven't got that problem. But it's still in Sweden. It's not like Sweden is the haven, because we have a big problem letting the women get the bigger budgets and get to do the mainstream films and whatever it is. But counting is really the most important thing. Because when you count, you're always aware of what you're doing, and you can never hide. So we make funding decisions every month, and we count every month, and then we aggregate the numbers every month. So I know for sure right now that in April we are now, and we have a change of management, so it has been a lack of a meeting or two. So right now we have funded 100% female directors, which sounds fantastic, but it's 2 projects. So that's what's happened. You add on, and if it's 100% men, then I don't take there aren't any women as an answer. Then I start digging. And what's happening is that people tell me, yeah, Anna, but you are doing quota. We are not doing quota. We are measuring and scrutinize every project as severe, even though it's a man. Because what happens when you do quota is that you have one wallet with the male money and one wallet with the female money. And the male wallet will be the quality money, and the female wallet will be the quota money. And then we haven't solved anything. But doing it together, it means that our funding decision is working the way that there are actually persons, one person that has their own wallet. We have 7 of those commissioners, and they make their own decisions. I sign it, but it's their decisions. So what they do is that they usually come and are in love with a male project. and they say, oh, this is a fantastic project. And then when you start digging into it, you realize it's usually actually not that fantastic. Usually no film project is that fantastic. If they were, we would have so many more successes out there. But usually you fall in love with a project of one reason or another. So you start digging into that and you realize the male projects are usually not that good. And then you dig into the female projects the same way and you realize they are not usually that bad. They are actually start to become interesting. So it turns out when we do that we more or less fund equally, because both genders have the same problem in finding good projects and presenting the good projects and then executing the good projects. It's a hard life being a filmer, and we still say 90% no, but that's what's happening, and that's why our film commissioners know that they just have to keep on digging, and they just can't sit there, wait for someone to knock on their door and say, yeah, I want to become a film director. We only fund professionals, so they want to become doing film directors. The last argument is a very true argument. Those in power have no desire to see change. And that is what change management is all about. No one who is in power or are the privileged ones. In Sweden, and I would say the rest of the Western world, that used to be white men that were the privileged ones. But some white women as well. And no one of those wants to see change. Because they know, or really, they knew how business was run. They knew how to get our money, and suddenly they don't know it any longer. So those ones, they are not very happy with me, because that's actually usually the same ones that didn't perform very well. The ones that have made mainstream films that, yeah, they went okay, but no like big revenues, and they didn't go into festivals, so they are not very artistic or very audience-oriented. So it's really those ones, and they are like 80% of the established film business, they are very nervous with me. Then within the other ones, it's the men usually, but some women who, no, I would say it's only men. Our few geniuses, we have a couple of them, and they love what I'm doing. And they are like, yeah, Anna, you keep on doing, because they know it will never affect them. But I know for sure that they really aren't very sort of aware of, they say, you do quota, because they believe that they will still get the money. And so far they will, but they will have to really perform every time. But we did a research comparing the industry, the steel industry in Sweden with film industry to see if there are differences. The steel industry, very long centuries, people work there for decades, and it's very different from film industry that is very new, and people go into projects and they are with each other for a couple of months and then they're out and doing something else. Are there still same attitudes, same questionings and everything? And it turns out to yes, because it turns out that gender inequality is a structural problem and not an industry problem, and that's what you have to understand. So, what happened? Well, Lydia sort of revealed it in the beginning, but I will try to steal back my thunder. But and this is very interesting, actually. What I said from the beginning, that you have to measure over time, because otherwise it gets really unfair. So we put it into periods of different CEOs. We are all women that have been CEO of the Film Institute since 2000. Before that, only men. And this CEO, she was very clear that doing gender equality was very important because she realized that it wasn't gender equal and it wasn't fair. But she didn't have any assignment, or she didn't have any, I would say, knowledge really. So she said, gender equality, yes. Quota, no, because we will never take gender equality before quality. So you can see during her period, we funded 19% female directors. And in brackets, it's when we are not involved. This is only private money. Actually, what you have in the States all the time. You have no regulation, you have no funding body, state funding body, which is very hard to make changes in that sense. Because you can see it doesn't change a lot. Screenwriters by that time, 26%, 23% if we were not involved, and 28% producers, 16% if we were not involved. Then came the next CEO. She got the assignment to aim for gender equality, but that was 40-60 aiming, no quota, because we want quality. So during her period, it increased 7%. If we were not involved, down to 7% during those years. Screenwriters up to 37%, which is, I mean, for American measure, it's fantastic, but it's not good enough. 16% if we were not involved, and 35% producers, and 23% if we were not involved. And then came 2011, and I went out saying, this is a catastrophe, says Anna Serner. And I took my gender equality plan, and I presented it through a coup. In Sweden, we have 1 week a year in the summertime. All politicians, all important people in NGOs or other organizations go to a small island, and they are together for a week and giving each other seminars. So there are like 3,500 seminars for free during 1 week to 10,000 people. So if you're unlucky, you get 3 persons. But if you don't tell them it's about gender equality, you may get more. Because what I always know is that, well, you're here, but I think, I don't know if you have an assignment to be here. Otherwise, I'm very happy that there's so many men here. But usually it's like 80-90% women, and they are always the women that already knows what I'm talking about. And they are the one that wants this. So it's not that I'm changing the world when I speak to them. So I decided to actually then fool and lie. And my organization, they are very sincere. They were, Anna, we have to tell people what they will go to see. And I said, no, because if we do that, they won't come. So we invited people to come to see commercials during history that meant we needed political actions. It has to be about politics and society. So that's what we named it. And we did pick out commercials. And in Sweden, you may think we're crazy, but people love good commercials. And so we always fill our theaters when we show commercials. People actually sort of come used to. Now they're getting lousy, but it used to be like that. And it's still, people love good commercials. So I knew we would fill a house. And so we did. It was packed, 350 people, every seat was taken. And we showed commercials from the 1910s, 20s, 30s, and always with a woman, as they always were, and unfortunately still very often are, an objectified woman, either really stupid or really pretty and sexy or whatever, but not in a leading, not a protagonist really. So, and then we had some satiric comments about it from stage. So the first commercial, everyone was very happy, and they were applauding, and everything was great. And then the third commercial, you could sense that they knew this is fishy. People were like, yeah, what is this? And then I went up on stage and I said, I'm sorry, this is a coup and you're taking hostage, because if I have told you, you wouldn't have been here, and we can all agree that this doesn't work. And everyone was like, no, it doesn't work. Yeah, so okay. So we decided at the Swedish Film Institute, we decided to change things. So we made an action plan. We all know if you want to do changes, you have to set a target, you have to choose a strategy, you have to have a budget, and you have to have some time. And that's how you do change in any matters. So this is how we do change. And then I talked about it, and then I said, so let's hear what are you guys doing? Please light up the room. And people were like, oh. And they didn't do anything, of course. They were all talking. Yeah, we are talking about this. We're doing this study, but they're not really doing things. And then I had some male friends. They were really mad with me. Coming afterwards, said, I would have come, Anna. Well, would you really? And I was like, no, maybe not. But the good thing was, which I knew was, this will get out and get spread. But I didn't realize how much it would, because the news got hold of it, and really the coup rather than the gender equality plan. But the coup was named the hottest media coup in this place. So all the media, we have like a news agent like AP, and they picked it up. So it was spread in all Swedish newspapers the next day. So from July 3rd, 2012, no one could escape that the Swedish Film Institute wanted to make change. And then suddenly the producers and production companies found a lot of women. And suddenly, because here they said, but there aren't any competent female directors and they don't apply. Well, yeah, if they, as the young women knows, if you have no expectation to get money, why bother applying? But suddenly everyone realized you have expectations and it's actually possible. So suddenly the increase of application with women in them was enormous. So in 2000, this is over time, 2013, we funded 35% female directors, so it jumped up just in 1 year's time. And then 2014, we funded 50%, and 2015, 38%, which aggregates to 44%, which I think is pretty okay. Screenwrite, and still the private sector, 14%. So as you can see, Sweden is no different. In Hollywood, I think it's 8% female directors. So, we're a little bit better, not much. Screenwriters, 46. If we're not there, 16. Producers, though, that's the next female occupation. So the salaries will go down. No, we hope not. But this is really what happened. And then the interesting thing is, did we lose quality? And I wouldn't say that if I didn't know the answer, of course. So this is what happened. These are the effects. During the same time, more or less the last time, 2010 to 2015, this means that the funding decisions, of course, were made between 2005, probably up to 2013 or something. But it takes longer time for some projects to be ready and stuff. But for narratives, this is only narratives first. 60% of all awards in our Oscar award were handed out to women, directing, screenwriting, or producing. 40% of all awards in the 6 top international film festivals. And you all know that just getting selected is very hard. And if we could get the statistics going our side by picking festivals, there are 10,000s of festivals all over the place. Those ones aren't hard to get into. You have to measure the top ones. So this is Berlinale, Cannes, Toronto, Venice, Sundance, and IDFA. And women got 40% of all the awards in those. Berlinale, this is last year. Berlinale 2015, we had 7 films. That's a lot for a country with 9 million inhabitants. Mm-hmm. 71% were women. And we had a joint thing with the other countries that have indigenous people, the Sami people. It's Canada, Sweden, Norway, and Finland, I think. And we made a selection of 7 short films. Sweden got almost half of those, 3. They were all women. And there were no other women, female directors in those shorts. And I'm sure that the biology of the Swedish women aren't different from the other countries. It's just that their funding system is not appreciating or finding quality. So it was 71% women. In Cannes 2015, we had 6 films. And Cannes is, well, I guess you read about them. It's very hard. 33% women. Toronto last year, 6 films, 80% women. IDFA, the International Documentary Festival, 10 films, 40% women. And Berlinale this year, 9 films and 60% women. And in this Berlinale, actually, we got 2 of the best prizes, Crystal Beers. And that was handed to 2 female directors. One first-time director and the other one has second or third. Which is historical, never heard of. Sweden getting 2 of the best prizes in the world in the same occasion. We knew that in advance. We usually get to know these things in the Institute. So we made a press kit and we sent it out to the newspapers like Thursday, because during the weekends they are understaffed and they just don't change the pages. Mm-hmm. And we was all under embargo. And they wrote about this much, maybe. Because, we already made those pages. Mm-hmm. A couple of months earlier, we got the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival to Roy Andersson. And when that happened, which is historical as well, fantastic, and I'm very happy for him because he's a very artistic and talented man. But when he got that one prize, I was called up in the Saturday night where the public radio said, we are changing the whole news because we get a Golden Lion and Roy is getting an award and can you be on the air? Directly. I said, yeah, I can. And the next day, the newspaper, then they weren't understaffed. So they rewrote all the pages because we didn't know this. Or we did know a little bit advanced, but not that much. When he won it, no problem to make that a focus. But when they won it, no attention. And that's why we made this site, Nordic Women in Film, because otherwise, the women get forgotten. And they are actually worth being remembered. And when you look at this, you can as well say, do we have maybe a problem with competence with male directors? I mean, the women takes it. And of course, we always said that the women aren't competent enough. That's why they couldn't do it. So maybe now the men aren't competent enough. But of course that's not true. I'm totally sure that men and women are as good both, and we still fund 50% to the men, so it's not that they don't get money. The thing is that, and I think you guys are experiencing it, we were talking a little bit earlier, that when women do the same stories about love, friendship, death, getting children, divorcing, whatever it is, there aren't that many big stories. They do it with a female perspective. And that feels new. And that feels unique. And suddenly, and that is actually what quality is. To be original. So that's why they are admitted and wanted in the film festivals. Because it's like, oh, I haven't seen that before. How many of you have seen Boyhood? Yeah, quite a few. I guess you loved it. I kind of liked it as well. I thought it was a little bit too long. And it was yet another film about a white trash boy growing up. And we've seen that quite a few times. Read a lot of books about it as well. But of course it was great. And the idea of shooting once a year, it was fantastic. At the same time, it was a film called Girlhood. How many of you saw that? No one. By a female director, French female director called Céline Sciamma. It's about 5 black girls in Paris, the suburb of Paris, today. Not 12 years a slave, where you see black people being slaved, or prostitutes, or whatever they are. They are just individuals living in a suburb and being a bunch of friends, and happen to be women. It was like getting just a big punch in your stomach, because it was I never saw that. And just that is just crazy. So, I mean, we are working for doing gender equality behind the camera, because that really makes changes in front of the camera. Suddenly, you heard about the Bechdel test, right? Yeah, I mean, 2 women having a name, talking about something else but men for a minute, and still films, more than half of the films don't pass. And when women in Sweden are doing it, 100% of the film passes. And women can be a protagonist and have more lines. You know that Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman had less lines than Richard Gere? She was, I mean, that was the whole film was about Pretty Woman, but now you don't get to talk that much because, no, I don't know. So things change, and what we have to do now is keep on this work, because you can see it's not finished, but as well, we have to start working with wider diversity, because getting new perspectives and new stories, that's quality. And as long as we don't do that, film will lose the urgency. And why everyone loves film is because it tells us something. And if it will only keep on telling stories to a certain amount of the population, then we have lost a lot of people out there. So that's what I'm going to work for, and I hope that you are going to work for that too. Thank you. Come on up. Ooh.
Have a seat.
To sit in
Have a seat.
director's chair. That's amazing. I never got to do that.
Hello.
Hi.
First of all, being Swedish, I just want to say thank you for having you here, and you talking about equality really makes me proud of Sweden, so I just want to say that. And then I just wanted to hear your thoughts about a little theory that me and my female filmmakers have about generations. And so what we've kind of noticed is that when professional men grow old, they tend to take on a younger version of themselves and promote this person and giving them, all that they have. But when it comes to women, when they grow older and a young woman comes along, it suddenly becomes a threat. And this is something I've seen here a lot, and also a little bit in Sweden. And I just wanted to hear what your thoughts about that is and how we can change that.
Well, in that sense, it's really the knowledge that you have to be aware of. That's what you're doing. What the men are doing is called homosociality, which means that they relate to each other and they are the same. So they sort of fall in love with each other and they pick their crown prince. And there's really a lot of studies regarding that. So it's a fact. And the women, of course, realize that there is the power. So that's women get heterosocialized. They try to find the power with the men, and some women's strategy for that is pretending they are men. There are a lot of pretended men out there, and in Sweden, I don't know about here, but in Sweden, the women in leading positions, they never talk about gender equality because they say, there is no problem, look at me. It went well for me. And they just forgot that they were 4%. Sweden is much worse in leading positions in the corporate business. There we have 4% women in leading positions in the top 200 companies, which is crazy. And that we have the maternity or paternity leave, which is great that we get 18 months and 12 months of them are paid. But it means that women falls out of the system. So what we need to realize and get to know, for me it has been really, really helpful as a woman to learn about how this structure is. Because then you can have a strategy. There are different kinds of how women are treated. We are the iron ladies. I'm usually, yeah, you are so hard, Anna. Hard? Yeah, you're very hard. What do you mean? No, but I think you're honest and you are direct. So that means I'm a hard person? That's very strange. But so I'm a more of the Thatcher woman, and then you have the mascot, who is the cute girl who is always, working like that. So we can, as women, realize that that is the roles we get, and then we can play along, but under control. And then to realize that we will never be a man, even though we sort of believe that we are in those rooms, but we are never men. And I think that men, it's not like they are aware of what they're doing. It's just the way that they are brought up as well. So they need, of course, education. But our next step now is to make a new gender action plan. And that is really to educate the schools. How do you treat people differently? My first experience when I came to the film industry was that I went to one of the academies in Sweden, in Göteborg, and there were 3, I don't know how you do your exams, but in Sweden they make a film as a final, and then you have opponents in the students and a teacher. And it was one woman and one young woman, 2 young men. And one of the young men, obviously everyone was in love with him. He is the next genius, no doubt about that. The woman, it turned out that he was a bourgeois guy growing up with his family in a house in nice parts of Gothenburg. Then there was one guy who was obviously pretty boring because no one really engaged with him at all. And the woman who had eating disorders previously. So the woman made a film about eating disorders, and the 2 guys made a film about love and relationships. The one guy that everyone was in love with did a movie about a couple that had a really shitty relationship, only arguments in an apartment. And the other guy, it was a child involved, and they split up and moved back, and it was problematic. So and she did about eating disorder. So when the students started to questioning the guy everyone was in love with, they questioned him so hard, because you do that to geniuses. They have to hear the hard questions, because otherwise they will not evolve much enough. So they were really, why did you choose that? And how come you didn't give them lines that blah, blah, blah? It was very interesting, the different angles you can have on the setting and the apartment, and why didn't they ever go out from the apartment, and all the choices he made. And the boring guy, he got only questions like, so what kind of camera did you use? How did you do the lighting? And it was outside, wasn't that hard, blah, blah, blah. And the girl, she got, how are you feeling today? How do you feel going out in the streets? Are you afraid of meeting your friends and your family? Now you show the film. It was so personal. She got the personal questions, and they got the professional questions. And then afterwards, I realized that this young genius guy, he started off, as I said, very proper, with a neat little girlfriend and a neat little house and neat little family. He came out from the closet, moved in with his new boyfriend into a small apartment. And of course, that was his film all about. No one asked him a personal question. And when I said this to the teachers, they were like, did you realize how you treated them differently? And they were like, no, we didn't. We are so aware. So now we're going to give them education, because that's how you sort of give people a career. So, I don't know about you here, but
Yeah, but thank you so much.
Another question.
Hi. I just wanted to start by congratulating you on all your achievements and, thank you for doing the work that you do. I'm really interested on the distribution side of this discussion because while you mostly, while there's major change going on in the production side of things and the people who are winning festivals, mostly European, and you have like amazing female indie directors like Miranda July, Lucia Ponzo, or Emily Impor. Those people are not getting distribution deals.
Yeah.
And I feel that's like an intrinsic part of this conversation is like, how do we move forward if those people's voice is getting produced but is not getting heard, So like, I just wanted to see if you have any insights on the distribution sides of things and also any recommendations for us as professionals that are getting into the industry right now, how we can affect the distribution side of things.
Yeah, unfortunately, the distribution side is a sad chapter in Sweden as well because it's really old-fashioned. And when this movement group of women, I made them meet all the gatekeepers to hear how they were thinking. And it was very interesting because in my organization where we talk a lot, we have had a lot of education, they were talking out how they were thinking, and it was a very good meeting with the 7 commissioners and the women. Then we made them meet the distributors, and they were like, no, but we are not able, we don't choose. It's only quality, I mean, those are the projects that comes to us, and it's only the producers that have to do this. And it was very frustrating because then we made them meet the producers, and the producers said, well, we can't choose because the distributors will say no. So then we said, so maybe you two should meet and maybe get some education here. But what we have been trying to do, which again, being the funder even for distribution, we can affect things. So we changed the funding system to force the distributor to come into a project already when it's the funding or the production decision is taken. Because distributors come in very late, and then the producer, unfortunately, I don't know how it is here, but in Sweden, the producer sort of, their work is done, and they made their money being in production, and they don't expect to get big money out from the audience, so they don't really care. And the distributor, they come in, and they do their same old posters, and really very old-fashioned. But when they come in earlier, and that is what you actually can do if you are into making yourself, is to choose the distributor and really force them to be with you from the beginning and be very clear with what kind of message you want, and to be very clear in and knowing that female directors, for instance, they don't have less audience than male directors. There are a lot of knowledge about that. But I think to actually start the conversation with the distributor and much, much earlier. But I don't know how you do that here, really. But
thank you.
Yeah.
If I can also add to that, in the U.S. system, we sort of divide the world of our industry into two.
Yeah.
And it would be the traditional studio model, which is a group of studios are behind a slate of films, not unlike the slate you approve each year. And historically, those studios, and continue to be, helmed by males. We do have a handful of females that are in powerful positions, but proportionately far less. And that parallels all industry in the U.S. for the most part. And in a case like that, a blockbuster that comes out of the studio is male-driven, more often than not always male-directed, multiple male producers, male screenwriter, and there will be some female cast, but in the secondary non-protagonist roles. In the independent model, and that's where people are out funding, right? You're off on your own, putting your project together, and, unless through divine intervention, you won't have your distribution up front. You will make your projects hoping to get it distributed, and then you are chasing the distribution outlet that you can align their audience interest with what you've produced. And I think the playing field is more open in the independent model. No one is keeping you from making your film except your own ability to put the project together, find your funding, and put the elements together. But then you are 100% out there seeking the distributor that says, our audiences want this. So we're in an equally tough position here on the U.S. side, because studio films do get made with leading actresses and an occasional female director and female producers, but when that happens, it's so few and far between. It's much publicized. When a female director wins an Academy Award, or when incredibly prolific female actresses come out and speak about it. Many of you should have probably discussed in your classes the issue of the wage disparity between male and female actresses. And there's, public, well-known actors and actresses have come out and talked about it. Some off the cuff, very Anna-like, very honest, right? And some sort of under fire, having to backpedal because they said it, and then maybe their handler said, oh, you didn't sound like you were supporting that actress who spoke out. So they would come back out and say something a little bit more encouraging because of the huge wage differential within our A-list actors, which is sort of the place where, everyone can do and make whatever they want. And even then, there's a very wide range. So we're
there
in
is,
it too.
Women in Hollywood.
Yes.
Yeah, Melissa Silverstein, who is a very active activist, she put together a toolkit with arguments you always have to argue against financiers. And if you have women on board, you have to argue much more. And so she made a toolkit of a lot of arguments why women work out as good or better than the men. So I can recommend that. I think that's on their site, Women in Hollywood.
Hi, thank you for coming. Even as a straight white male, I very much appreciate all you're saying.
Thank you.
Just to the point of what you're discussing right now, it does sound like in Sweden, there's a different model for how films get made, with a lot more support from institutes like your own. Unlike here in the United States, where a lot of it is dollar-driven and corporate-driven. So my question is, have you done any sort of, and I've heard you allude to this, but specific analysis of maybe how to affect the money-driven culture of Hollywood to create an equation that works for them that can help support women in film?
In Hollywood?
Or in Hollywood, or in sort of the
non-governmental...
The big machine, the big entertainment industry machine, maybe internationally?
Yeah. No. I mean, it's, of course, as hard for me as it is for you to figure that out. So what we all know is that it works with women. So we just have to show that.
Prove that it...
Yeah, prove it...
returns, too.
Yeah, in different ways. So, I mean, that would be... I think that anyone who's into this and really want to do something, they could actually... Like we did the Nordic Women in Film, you can have your alumni and show everyone that actually have made things here. So you can... Because the problem is that you forget. If you don't hear it, my top of mind name list is male. Because that's the only thing I read in the papers. I am forcing myself to remember the female names. But you have to do lists, and you have to show it, and you have to gather arguments. Yeah, it's not an easy way.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I have another more of a question, but in in an academic setting, our students are learning, regardless of the craft they've come to study, to work on crews. So a filmmaking student is trained to shoot the camera and write the script. But in terms of during production, when let's hope the screenwriter's job is done and the producer's job's not horrifyingly difficult, it's really on the crew, right? It's who the director is hiring to put together to make the project. Have you been, does the Institute actually go and keep track of these 15 films that get approved for funding and look at I don't want to say quota or percentages, but how many of them have substantial numbers of female crew versus male?
We haven't done it over the years, but there is a Women in Film and Television in Sweden. They just made a survey of the films that had premiere in 2014 to see what changes or differences there were. And it was obvious that when it was female directors, there were more usual that they all passed the Bechdel test, but then there were a female cinematographer and the whole crew went more gender equal. So in our next gender action plan, our new tagline, which is very catchy, we think, it's by 50-50 by 2020.
Nice.
And that means 50-50 behind the camera and 50-50 in front of the camera.
That's
because
great.
They go together.
Well, we have trends, and there has been work done to analyze it in the U.S., and I see it. I see it when I look at crew lists. We will have much higher percentages of women in the script supervisor role. Much higher percentage of women in wardrobe and makeup.
Oh, yeah.
Even though wardrobe, I mean, on a studio film, the wardrobe crew, they're loading giant sea containers. I mean, it's hard physical work, and yet there's far more women in that side of it. It's a female publicist who will be on set.
But you know, in the beginning of the film's history, the men were doing the camera and the lighting, and the women were doing that soft, people-y stuff, directing and writing,
Editing, working.
Yeah, that was. I don't know how they edited by that time actually, but when they started, was the women doing directing. So we all got to learn that the first long narrative feature film was made by Griffith, A Birth of a Nation, which is not true. It was Lois Weber. She was a woman. She's made 100 narratives. Nobody knows about her. The thing changed when the money came into the business. When the East Coast capitalists came in, then the women were out from directing because suddenly you realized, who's the boss here? It's not the lightning guy, but he used to be the one. So then women were really in majority before that, which is so interesting.
And then it shifted.
And now they're carrying very heavy but still clothes because that's so soft.
Right.
Hi Anna, my name is Katya, and my question is, could you please name, let's say, 5 of the most influential women in the film industry?
What I believe are the most influential women? Well, right now I would say that would be, in my perspective, the ones that actually spoke up now. It's Meryl Streep, it's Gina Davis, it's Susan Sarandon, it's, well, you could pick Kate Blanchett, Patricia Arquette. Those are the ones that really spoke up. But then, of course, the potential lies with Catherine Bigelow, for instance, or Jane Campion, the ones that really were picked out. Very few, but I think Jane Campion has made a big effort, and then I would really say the ones that get selected are the ones that are important. So, but Catherine Bigelow, she's of course afraid of being the troublemaker, so she's quiet. Jane Campion is not. She is actually speaking out.
Okay, thank you.
I wish I could say so many more names, because we need them to speak out.
Okay, thanks.
I think we do have to be grateful for the actresses that take their opportunity, the forum that they
Yeah.
have. They have the public's ear, and they have the opportunity to speak out. So the fact that they do certainly sheds light and makes us talk. That's the beginning of it, certainly, you know? Another question.
Hi. So, as the head of funding a state organization, how much do you think you say there's a problem with the social contract for equality? So, how much of making your films goes into pleasing the audience, and how much goes to changing the audience?
In Sweden?
Yes.
Well, I would say in Sweden it's 50-50 probably. We have a lot of, Swedish is such a small language and we are such a small audience. So to be able to travel, you have to be an art house. And we are considered art house anyways because people speak Swedish in Swedish films. So the audience-driven films are very few. And they are usually not very good, actually, because they are just in the business sort of doing. But so I would say that we really have to take care of our art house productions.
Always.
Always, because those are the ones that travel. The other one, they have a short life in cinemas and then they pass away.
Okay, thanks.
Hello. All right, so my question, okay. I do understand. Okay, so when we see this big women in the film industry who have power, who have prestige, who have leverage, right? And yes, they might say a few words here and there, but then the next movie you'll see, they will still take the same sort of, girl next door or the femme fatale, the usual same, sexist roles, right? Like, okay, I understand that there's a need for these women, of course, to keep a career and, to keep working, definitely. They can't just be like, no, I'm not gonna take up any work. But, I'm always so surprised of, and again, I'm not up there, so I don't know what's actually happening all behind the scenes. And, of course, I'm just, kind of seeing from my seat in my house, right? But I'm always so surprised how they don't sort of get together and really make a change and really be like, no, I'm not going to play this role. I'm Kate Blanchett. I'm Kate Winslet. I'm I have the power to say no or to change this, right? So, and I guess it also comes when you're in it. It's also a lot more difficult to get out of it and see it and pinpoint it. Also because I know for experience men tend to get really condescending and oh, yeah. But, this will make you money. Go do it. Right? So it's I'm wondering what's missing because it's not like we are absent. It's not like we are not strong enough. It's not like we're not brave. I do understand that there's a need to keep working, definitely, and that you can't make a change with one movie or one, and I do understand there's actors, actresses who are ambassadors, to UN, NATO, whatever it is. But it still feels like I'm wondering what's really, what's missing.
I really understand your position, and sometimes I get really sort of frustrated and sad that it's the same thing. But then I think that it's exactly that we have had a hierarchy and a structure for hundreds of years, anyway, thousands of years, maybe, what do I know, where it's women who take positions are what you call in Swedish double punished. You're punished at work because you are not as good and you are being a problem again, and then as well you're punished for being a bad mother. So you're not taking care of your children. So you're having a profession, a career is more interesting than. So it's a very demanding step to step forward and actually do things when all you hear is that you're expected to be a nice person and you're just the bitch. And for me, I mean, I've experienced that a lot. I haven't had trolls, but I mean, there are women that are being hated so badly by these trolls. It's just unbelievable. And what I hear is just the small words. But I've heard, like, I was appointed to a board, and it was just, it was like a board of 2 persons. There was no enterprise. It was just rubbish. And it was still in the trade press. And said, now Anna Serner is appointed to board. And someone wrote in the comments under that article, yeah, Anna is really good. So that's great that they pick her up. But I really hope she hasn't got a family. I was like, yeah. And some other then wrote and said, yeah, this was, or maybe that one was earlier when I was 34, I remember. Anna is a menopause cow. And I was like, yeah, that really makes you laugh a bit because, yeah, menopause, 34, yeah, you go to your biology lessons. But if you get to hear that all the time, it's really... You pay a high price. That's why so few do it. So what we have to do is, which everyone should be aware of, is if there is a woman doing it, never ever criticize her publicly. You can think that she seems a bit bitchy, that they are actually right, but never say it. Just give her support, defend her, and in public always agree with her, because otherwise, if we don't help each other, Madeleine Albright said that there are a place in hell for women who don't help each other, but that goes for men as well. We have to show it's okay, but it will take we will be dead by far before this is over, unfortunately. I think the past 1.5 years, my experience of going from being bitch to rock star actually shows that attitudes are now changing. And we all know that attitudes goes up and down and there are backlashes. Mm-hmm. So let's try to grasp this moment and do the best of it.
Because that's like the other thing was that it's the danger of banality of everyday comments, right? For example, I have friends who I propose a movie, right? It has a female protagonist, God forbid, right? And immediately the reaction is, I don't want to see a chick flick. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, you can't say that to me, because also sometimes I will get really it just makes me, I feel it here, but you gotta cool it down and not go crazy. But I think it's banality, it's small comments like this that though
But what you need to do, and that is what I need to do as well, is to not listen to that. And to be able to do that, you have to find people that you can have as coaches, not as a mentor. You can have a mentor as well, of course, but just to have, I sort of point to people, women I find interesting and think can give me energy. And, I throw them a dinner or a lunch, a free lunch. No one says no to a free lunch. So that you actually surround yourself with people that knows who you are. So you can be able to take those comments, because you will always get them. You just have to have a strategy not to let them break you down.
You can't change it. How would I steer my friends not to think like that?
I can actually wrap up this question by saying, too, the fact that people identify something as a chick flick, you have to understand that it's recognized that there's an audience for it. So that's the group of people that can't appreciate the quality of that kind of film. To Anna's point, go find the people that do. Go find those people.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Anna. Ooh. I'm Cricket Rumley. I'm a senior screenwriting instructor here. Thank you so much for being here. And actually, I would say, speaking on an international level, this is clearly a problem around the globe. And it's so exciting and refreshing to hear you speak to this point. And I do have a question, but the woman who asked about influential directors, female directors, if you guys are not paying attention to to the current press. There's a film out called The Invitation by a female director named Karin Kusama. Please go Google that later today. She won at Sundance the Best Director and Best Film awards in 2000 and is talking very openly about how challenging it has been to build a career. So that is my statement. And now my question. In the United States, we don't have any government film funding at all. Can you talk a little bit about how one applies for funding through the Swedish Film Institute? What is the process?
Oh, the process is that you usually send in some kind of material, a script or something, and if the commissioner, the person, finds it interesting enough, you have a first meeting. And during that and you have to fill in a form, and you have to be professional, so we don't fund anyone. You have to show that you have actually capability of doing a film as well. And then we start off by giving development money. So you can get up to 100,000 maybe US dollars in development, which I even don't know. So they can give, and then they can say, this is not interesting enough, sorry, you got the money, you could keep on doing another script. But then the more money you get into the project, the closer you get to a production funding decision. And by that time, I get involved, and I get to ask the questions to understand the project and who is doing it and why. I want to know why the commissioners make their decisions. But in the meanwhile, they say no to a lot. So, as I said, we say no to 80-90% of all applications. But it's really a very long process that almost always starts off with development money. But you can as well apply with a ready film as long as it hasn't had premiere yet. So, and that is, of course, that happens. For instance, there was this film that was selected and won, I think, in Sundance this year, Kiki, about voguing community in New York. That's you have to be a Swedish production company to get the money, but you can be a foreign director. So she was living in New York, and she still is, but the production company was in Stockholm. So they could ask for funding. But then she already made like 80% of her film. But then it was really great. So we threw in money because that makes her life a lot easier. And she can have a life after as well.
Well, I certainly hope that the capitalistic commercial system that is Hollywood will start to take a page out of your book. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Last question of the evening.
Hello, my name is Jimena, and I'm from Central America, and I appreciated the story that you said about Chile. And my question, actually, it's not a question, it's more like I want to hear some advice, which is in Latin America, we have a lot of content of women as main roles, but it is more like in the novella or soap opera kind of way. So my question and advice, is like, what would you say to writers or content creators in which like our content, and even though we have a woman as the main role, is always like content for women with women, but for women, because the women, the documentary, that's what men thought, that it was made for just like people who like those kind of things, women. So if I'm a writer and I want to create content that appeals men, then they don't see my content like it's just for women. What would be your advice? Because it's very complicated in that way to create gender equality content that appeals both in the end.
Well, actually, I mean, I think it's both true sometimes, but not true in other senses, because there are a lot of films made by women. Actually, I think audience wants to see good film. they don't care if it's a man or a woman behind the camera. They just, and there are those that want to see the latest Tarantino movie, so they go see it even though it's shitty. So my advice is don't go to see those films that only builds up. Even though you hear it's a bad one and people still go and see it, don't do that. And if you hear it's a good female director, go the first weekend to just support it, because otherwise they take it down. But I think that anyone that uses I don't think really there are female films. I think that if you're a scriptwriter and if you're a female director, you just pick a scriptwriter that writes a story about life. And it can have a female protagonist, but it's not a film that attracts women more. Or it can have male protagonists. I mean, there's a lot of men having made films about women, and it hasn't been any wrong with that. So I think we just have to get used. We have to get more women working so we don't even try to find these answers, because I think women do film about life and men do film about life. And I think every life, if it's a good film, the audience want to see it. And it can be an action film or a romance. It's really what kind of film you want to do. So, of course, everyone should do their film. And try not to, but as a female director, of course, if you don't want to be classified as a woman director doing films for women, then be careful and don't do it. And just decide that, pick another script if you're privileged enough to be able to choose.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, I would say, just to recap, I think this was an opportunity to get a deep perspective on what's happening elsewhere in the world, but parallels a lot of the issues that we're dealing with right here in the U.S., right here in Hollywood, and in the fact that we have a very international group here, a very international school. We're seeing trends hopefully shifting worldwide through the help and the efforts of a small Nordic country and an outspoken activist within it, right? So,
troublemaker.
But on behalf of the New York Film Academy, please join me in thanking Anna for her time this evening. Thank you. Thank you.